But the story that's breaking on the news today, tonight, this Friday night, Iran has launched 35 missiles now at Israel in another barrage. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today visited an Israeli Defense Force intelligence base. Iran claimed on Friday that it would not discuss the future of its nuclear program while under attack by Israel. Remember, America has been putting pressure on Iran to come to the negotiating table. Clearly, though, the war therefore escalating all the time. 35 missiles launched by Iran, Israel hitting back and targeting establishments close to nuclear sites. I want to go to our correspondent at the very latest. Shivani Sharma joins me from Tel Aviv. Shivani, presumably you're at the hub of all the action taking place. Give us a sense of the mood in Tel Aviv at the moment, a city which has been the worst affected by those missile strikes.
Rajdeep, I'll try to show the pictures because pictures speak louder than words. And here, this is the area which has been hit by an Iranian missile right in the place. This happens to be the financial hub of Israel. You see, this is the building that was hit yesterday by a rocket that came in from Iran. This whole area was hit severely. And these buildings, which are the offices of multiple companies, this happens to be the most busiest area in Tel Aviv. But here you see the roads are deserted, Rajdeep. This is severely affected. You see where the rocket had hit yesterday and to a place across the road. It happens to be around 70 meters, Rajdeep. But these buildings, they've been hit in severe manner. See, this is the building that has been broken. This whole area is now deserted. There is nobody inside these buildings now. The police has been sitting here and nobody is allowed to move closer to this area. So this is just one building like this, Rajdeep. There are several others. I've been here since morning and I've been trying to reach more places, talk to people, and people say that certainly the lives are impacted. They are not coming out. They want to stay protected in the zones where they can just reach out to the shelters in no time, because there have been sirens all day, and sometimes they are going to the shelters 10 times a day. So this is the kind of situation. You can see this road happens to be one of the busiest roads in Israel, close to Tel Aviv in normal days, but this is deserted now. You hardly see people out here. Only those who have some very important work, they are coming out, and many of them are also in transit, leaving to the places which are more protected. In fact, today morning there was a hit at Haifa. That's been told at Siba also. And when I came here, immediately after that there was a siren sounded. We went to a shelter, and right then again there was an attack. We could hear the explosion, though this was a place quite far away. So lives are impacted certainly, and the situation seems to escalate with each day. Rajdeep.
Okay. Shivani Sharma joining me there from Tel Aviv, telling us how sirens are there virtually every few hours, people going into bunkers, so clearly taking no chances given the nature of the attacks of the Iranian missiles. I appreciate you joining us, and stay safe there, Shivani Sharma. Now remember, as the war between Israel and Iran is entering its 8th day, one figure is key to the endgame in West Asia. He's styled as an Ayatollah, the supreme leader in Iran, and he has been in power in that country since way back in 1989. For the West, his days are numbered, and it's only a matter of time before Iran sees a regime change, according to the West. But is it that easy to depose the longest-serving head of state in the Middle East? Is the West making the cardinal sin of underestimating Iran and its supreme leader, Ali Khamenei? Take a look at our special report.
In 1981, a young Ali Khamenei kissed the hand of Iran's then revolutionary leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. A loyal foot soldier of the revolution, Khamenei would rise not just through faith, but also by force to become supreme leader by 1989. Over the next 35 years, Khamenei transformed Iran into a regional powerhouse through proxy militias, ballistic missiles, and nuclear brinkmanship, all while crushing dissent at home. Protest movements were met with batons. Women demanding freedom labeled foreign agents. A surveillance state watched over by clerics and commanders. After the Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023, Khamenei's axis of resistance started to unravel. Hamas weakened, Hezbollah's command decimated, Assad ousted, and now Israeli missiles striking deep within Tehran. The 86-year-old cleric, once seen as a grand master of regional strategy, is on the defensive, yet defiant.
They should not think they struck and it's over. No. Life will become bitter for them, without a doubt.
Khamenei still commands loyalty from the Revolutionary Guard, wields thousands of missiles, and for now controls a nuclear program. If Iran thinks he will go quietly, it may be mistaken.
If any government among the Islamic nations in any way or under any excuse supports the Zionist regime, whether by normalizing relations, blocking aid to Palestine, or justifying the crimes of the Zionists, they should know that an eternal shame will hang over their history.
So far, Iran has launched its largest ever missile barrage at Israel. But the show of force may only underline its isolation. The world has underestimated Iran before. It would be unwise to do so again, even as the walls seem to close in on the Supreme Leader's final chapter. Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's raise the big question. Ayatollah Khamenei's future. Will Iran see a regime change as Israel appears to be claiming it will? Why is a regime change in Iran not so easy in the first instance, to give it some context? Remember, this is a very robust theocratic system that has resisted external and internal pressure for decades. They fought a 9-year war with Iraq and survived. They've survived a long period of isolation from the world and yet continued. There's the loyalty of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. They work on fear. Let's be clear. This is a regime where fear also works along with faith. Faith and fear work together when it comes to Ali Khamenei and the clerics who rule Iran. Nationalistic sentiment has been fueled by anti-Iran rhetoric of US and Israel. So there is that core sense of Israeli pride, Irani pride, which will come in, and Khamenei hopes to benefit from that. Remember also, there is no real opposition in Iran over these years, a very fragmented opposition that has been unable to challenge the regime effectively all these years. And there is the regional influence through proxies in the so-called axis of resistance. Yes, they weakened Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, but the truth is that Iran remains a central player in the Middle East. That's the question I want to ask. Will there be regime change in Iran? It's a question that could affect even this part of the world. Barbara Slevin, fellow at the Stimson Center and author, joins us. Thanks very much, Barbara, for joining us. Let's go straight to that question. How easy do you believe it is for the United States and Israel, if they were to work in tandem in the weeks ahead, to bring about a regime change in Iran?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I don't think it's that easy. And I think we have to understand that Ayatollah Khamenei, yes, he is the supreme leader of Iran, but he presides over a regime that has many members, many constituents, that operates through a kind of consensus. He's not Saddam Hussein, he's not a one-man band in the way that so many dictators and potentates in the region are. He is replaceable. If the Israelis carry out threats, or the US carries out threats to assassinate Ayatollah Khamenei, he will be replaced. And he's 86 years old. So there has been a succession plan that has been there, I'm sure, for many, many years. We also have the question of not just the government bureaucracy, but the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is really the backbone of the regime. And although the Israelis have decapitated the IRGC, it is a big organization, and I think 150,000 members. It will be able, and has, as we've seen, been able to respond to the Israeli strikes by retaliating and causing significant damage and loss of life in Israel. So, no, I don't think regime change is something you do like that. That said, these attacks have exposed the vulnerability and the failures of the regime in a really graphic way, their inability to foresee them coming to protect their elite, and also the policies that they've espoused, which have motivated the Israelis to do this in the first place.
You know, I just want to play a graphic, Barbara, on this big question that we posed. Is the West and Israel underestimating Iran? Factor number one, Iran's military is formidable in asymmetric warfare. You cannot deny that Iran has a large pool of missiles. They're not quite, therefore, like the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas that have relied on Iran's funding. Factor number two, thousands of ballistic missiles and drones still exist in Iran's arsenal. Factor three, Iran is a very large country, economically resilient through, of course, its exports, especially oil that it's tried to non-West allies. Strategic ties with Russia and China provide tactical backing. And the fifth factor, proxy groups that expand Iran's regional influence in the Middle East. The sixth factor, nuclear facilities in Natanz, Fordo, Fordo is underground, resilient to external strikes. The reason I put these factors up, Barbara, there's a belief that we saw Saddam Hussein's regime crumble when the United States joined the war against terror in the early 2000s. Is Khamenei going to be like Saddam, someone who the Americans can take out?
Well, as I said before, you know, he may be killed in a missile strike somehow, although I'm sure he's well underground and protected at this point. But there are others who would step in. It's a large country. It has 90 million people. So, you know, and the United States is not invading Iran. There will be no boots on the ground. This is an air war. And no war has ever been definitively won or lost based on airstrikes. I mean, if you look at the US experience with Iraq, there were many cases where the US bombed Iraq, bombed facilities and so on, and it took a US invasion by ground forces to eventually get rid of Saddam Hussein, despite economic sanctions, all the pressure that was put on Iran during the 1990s. So no, this is not how regime change will happen. But there is deep anger and unease in Iran over the conduct of their foreign policy and their military policy, over the nuclear policy, whether it was worth it to spend blood and treasure on this program, that it seems quite obvious that the West and Israel are not going to allow Iran to maintain. Question we all have is whether Iran will still be able to covertly develop a nuclear bomb. India should know something about that. Certainly, it's likely that they have moved material and equipment to undisclosed locations. And that, of course, would be the ultimate irony, that Israel bombs Iran to get rid of the nuclear program, and that causes Iran to develop a bomb.
You see, you mentioned briefly that there is an element of unease, unrest, with a regime that's been in power for almost half a century. Ayatollah Khomeini came to power 79, we're in 2025, so that's 46 years. Do you believe that if there was the slightest opportunity that the people of Iran had, would they want to see the clerics who have ruled them for these 4.5 decades go? Or do they still have a lot of support on the street, given the fact that faith and fear, as I said earlier, coexist today in Iran?
I think the regime is incredibly unpopular, and if they ever had real elections, it would be gone in a heartbeat. But for it to fall while a foreign power is attacking the country is very different. And you've seen, even from Iranian dissidents in the West, that there has been a kind of rallying effect against what is seen as attacks that have gone way beyond the nuclear and military infrastructure that have hit apartment buildings. You remember the Israelis used to be famous for their sort of surgical assassinations. They would catch one man on the street. Now they're bombing apartment buildings in order to kill university professors, and they're killing lots of civilians. So this has caused obviously a big response. The other question is what comes next? If you get rid of the Islamic Republic, what follows? Is it better? And one fear that Iranians have is that the real Israeli game plan is not regime change, but destabilization and fragmentation. That the Israelis want Iran to collapse, that they want pieces of it to fall off, that they want ethnic minorities to rise up, that they can't bear the thought of a powerful Iran no matter what its government. So I think we should be fairly cautious about predicting A, regime change, and B, what would follow.
You mentioned what would follow because we saw with Saddam Hussein, when he fell, for a while there was complete chaos in Iraq. There's also a belief that the opposition is simply not strong enough in Iran. Most of the opposition activists have either fled the country or have disappeared. There are huge questions over human rights violations, so the fear factor. But the truth also is that a lot of close aides of Khamenei have been either assassinated or taken out, or he finds himself, some believe, isolated. Do you believe that there is, as you said earlier, a succession plan in place? Who will replace Khamenei in the worst case scenario for Iran?
Well, it could be another Ayatollah. It could be his second son, Mojtaba, any number of clerics in the so-called Assembly of Experts, which is the body that is nominally charged with choosing the supreme leader and supervising the supreme leader. It could be a military commander, someone whose name and face are not familiar to us. So, I think it's very hard to speculate. But Iran is pretty tough. And as you pointed out, it's very large, and people will hunker down and get through this. I think a bigger question is how long will Israel keep this up? When will Israel run out of missiles? How long will the United States continue to support Israel in this campaign? Will it go on forever? This is not like Russia, Ukraine. I mean, I think there's going to have to be some sort of end to this, because I don't think that Israel can sustain, certainly not at this tempo, can sustain a war like this. Especially
so final question, a quick answer, Barbara Steven. How do you, if you were to put a pundit's hat on, do you believe the regime will survive, or is it its last stand?
I think in the short term it will survive. I think in the long term, no.
Okay, short term, it will, you're saying will survive. In the long term, now how long is long term is the big question, Barbara.
In the long term, we're all dead, as they say. So
that's right.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, thank you very much. Barbara Steven joining me there from the Stimson Center, someone who's tracked Iran very, very closely. I appreciate you joining me. I'm now turning to someone who's seen widely as India's foremost expert on the Middle East, has served there as ambassador in several countries in the region. Talmiz Ahmad now joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Talmiz Ahmad. How do you see, you might have heard the Western political commentary that suggests that Iran is clearly on the back foot. Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader at 86, facing a battle for survival, that this could be the last stand of the clerics who've dominated Iran's politics for half a century. Do you agree that this is Khamenei's last stand?
You can describe this commentary with one word: absolute rubbish. There is an intense hostility towards Iran in large sections of the American media and some European media as well. This dates back to the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Also, it is very heavily influenced by the Israel lobby and by Israel itself. There are also very strong political lobbies in this regard, all across the Republican Party and also some sections of the Democratic Party as well. So there is a broad political consensus in the United States that is actively hostile to the Iranians. Actually, what we have seen over the last 7 days of the conflict is that actually Iran has done rather better than what the Israelis and their people had expected. We had been told by Netanyahu that we command the skies and we have carried out massive bombardment at will, etc. Actually, the response of Iran and the massive shower of missiles has really shaken the Israeli public opinion. At the same time, Israel has not been as successful as it had thought it would be with regard to the nuclear facilities. All the reports indicate that the damage so far has been superficial. It is because of this that a desperate Israel has now turned to the Americans and is extraordinarily anxious that the Americans should now join the war on their behalf and actually carry out the damage that they could not do. So it is really a very mischievous Israel that has initiated this conflict, which now wants to broaden it and bring in the Americans on their side.
With due respect, Talmiz Ahmad, you're saying the Western political commentary suggesting that Iran is finished is nonsense. But let me counter that with say, look, the top commanders of the Revolutionary Guard have been killed in the Israeli attacks. Several nuclear scientists have been killed. Close aides, political advisors of Mr. Khamenei, who's now 86, have also been killed in different attacks last year and this year. The leader is not getting any younger. Do you therefore not accept the fact that you've got a supreme leader in Iran who's getting increasingly isolated and he's the one who's getting desperate?
I think this is the way in which there is an attempt being made to seduce Donald Trump into the conflict by holding out this temptation that we are so close to regime change. We just have to do a little bit. But this kind of rubbish we have heard from Israel and pro-Israel elements in the West for the last 20 years. They've been predicting the fall of the Islamic regime so frequently that it has now become boring. They have been successful in killing a large number of people. Obviously, the Iranian security apparatus has been porous and has been found wanting. But since when did a country collapse because a few people at the top were killed? All of us at some level are dispensable, and everyone who is eliminated is very quickly replaced. What Israel does by killing these top leaders is to gain some plus points with their domestic opinion. They like to show to them how great we are, we could penetrate everywhere, but that has never changed the scenario. The Israelis have been at war with Hamas for the last 30 years, have killed a lot of Hamas leaders, but they have never been successful in eliminating Hamas. And exactly the same thing will now operate. You remember when the Americans had attacked Iraq and they finally killed Saddam Hussein, they eliminated large sections of the Iraqi armed forces, and then they were bottled up in Iraq for the next 20 years. So I'm not particularly impressed with this kind of showmanship.
You know, you're calling it showmanship again, Talmiz Ahmad. Are you telling me, therefore, you don't believe that there will be a regime change, that Iranians themselves, the people of Iran, are hankering for change after 46 years of complete control, first by Ayatollah Khomeini, then by Ali Khamenei, that there are instances of human rights violations against women in particular? You don't seem to believe that the people of Iran will now revolt and that will ensure regime change.
There was an attempt at the regime change in its early years when the Western powers and some Gulf states had encouraged Iraq to attack Iran. Nearly 1 million people were killed in that war. It lasted 8 years. The Islamic revolution got strengthened rather than weakened. Now also, who has done this kind of opinion poll within Iraq to constantly keep on saying the Iranians are going to rise up, the Iranians are disgruntled, the Iranians are going to do this or that? No one in the West, given the kind of rubbish that you see in their media, no one in the West actually knows Iran or wishes to know Iran. Iran is a very substantial, a very old, and a very complex country. And the Iranian people, or everyone has said that they are an extraordinarily nationalistic people and they despise external intervention in their political order. Therefore, I reject out of hand any of these loose suggestions coming from interested Western parties that Iran is at the verge of collapse. None of that is going to happen. In fact, Iran has given an extraordinarily good account in terms of the attacks that it has launched at Israel, and the Israelis are seriously worried and seriously found wanting. I mean, they have been found wanting.
But let me push you again, Mr. Ahmed. The truth also is, let's not deny this. This is an intensely despotic regime. It is seen to be tyrannical, as I said, towards women in particular. It's seen to have never observed human rights. There have been assassinations, disappearances. And therefore, there is a feeling that people are just waiting. It's a volcano waiting to explode. And if Iran is fully isolated in some ways, like its proxies, like Hezbollah and Hamas are defeated or on the back foot, in such a situation, even the Russians and Chinese are distancing themselves from Iran. The world is changing, according to this Western narrative.
None of this is true, not even slightly. What the Western powers hate is that countries that had been formally colonized by them or placed under their influence now are sources of resistance to imperialism. We are today at the cusp of a new order, an order that will see the empowerment of new middle powers, Iran amongst them. There is an intense hostility from Western sources, particularly the Americans, who now see their hegemony threatened. And therefore, they are willing to say anything, do anything in order to ensure that their hegemonic order is not disturbed. Where China and Russia are concerned, they are part of the challenge to the old order. They are very supportive of Iran. Obviously, there is no one who wants to get involved in a military conflict. There are no such alliances as there used to be in the 19th century, which made that assassination into a world war. But you will see that once this conflict is over, and regardless of the damage that Iran sustains, there will be a greater impetus towards a new world order than we have seen so far.
But tell me, Ahmed, you know the Arab world better than most. The Arab world, Arab leaders across countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, these countries have had a very difficult relationship with Iran in the past. There's the Sunni Shia angle. What role do you see them playing? Do you see the Arab world also isolating Iran the longer this conflict continues, or just the reverse?
There is a very deep-seated concern all across the Gulf and in West Asia in general about the emerging Israeli military hegemony. No one likes to see that. Up to now in West Asia, you had a balance of power, an effective balance of power. There used to be quarrels from time to time, but they used to be contained. What Israel is now doing, largely due to the domestic compulsions of Netanyahu, is to break all norms and rules and to go as far as possible as it can in wreaking damage and destruction. But there is no strategy. What does the Israeli want? As far as I can understand, the Arab world is very deeply concerned about this monster that has emerged in their midst. They fear that the balance of power has been broken, and now they will look at new sources of alignments among themselves and with external powers. And I believe China and Russia will be very major players in this scenario as soon as the conflict is done.
So you don't see, Talmiz Ahmed, Iran rushing to sign a deal or strike a deal with the United States on the nuclear issue, desperate to end this conflict. You actually seem to believe Iran is ready to take the Israeli blows and, if anything, escalate the conflict further. Am I correct?
I think Iran would like to do a nuclear deal. Do recall they did this deal 10 years ago in good faith. They abided by all the terms of the deal. It is the United States, specifically Donald Trump, influenced heavily by Netanyahu, who abruptly withdrew from the deal. Much of what has gone wrong in West Asia is due to this single act. But then the Israelis don't want any rapprochement, any engagement between the Iranians and the Americans. They want to constantly have this bogey of Iran, first about a nuclear weapons program and then about regime change. These are, for example, the nuclear weapons program. Consistently, American sources have advised their government and the international community that there is no weapons program. And constantly Netanyahu has said over the last 15 to 20 years that they are 1 week away from a bomb, they're 2 weeks away from a bomb, they're 10 days away from a bomb, without adducing any shred of evidence in this regard. Now he has picked up the bogey of regime change just to seduce Donald Trump into the conflict. Now, Donald Trump is a complex personality and we cannot predict which way he will go. He could go like we thought 2 days ago that he is now ready for war. And now he has told us yesterday he is not ready for war. He wants to give diplomacy a chance and is willing to wait for 2 weeks. He's very unpredictable. But the fact is that as of now, Netanyahu's gambit has not been successful.
My final question then in conclusion, just to help our viewers understand Ali Khamenei, this name that is making the headlines every night, Iran's supreme leader. Do you believe he is, as the Israelis portray, a modern-day Hitler who must go? Or do you believe he is someone who in his own way is very popular and has transformed Iran? Who really is Ali Khamenei, the devil? Or is he a hero for Iranians?
None of this has any basis in reality. Iran has made numerous attempts at engaging with the Americans and with the Western communities in good faith. It has suffered a lot at the hands of the West. And the best example in this regard is the Iran-Iraq war. And yet, after that, the Americans inflicted upon them the dual containment, when they had nothing to do with the Iraqi occupation of Kuwait. All of this negative influences have come from Israel. Israel has been a major presence in the councils of the United States, and it has built up movements in its favor. Recall here in the 1990s and the early part of this century, you had the neocon movement, a very powerful cabal of intellectuals who used to uphold Israel's interests over the interests of their own country. This kind of name calling to refer to Khamenei as Hitler only because Khamenei is an Iranian patriot. But can the Israelis or anyone deny that under him there have been so many overtures for dialogue and conversation on serious subjects? Do recall here that after 9/11, the best friend the Americans had in the region were the Iranians. They were the ones who guided them with regard to the targeting of Al-Qaeda leaders. And they expected that they would get something in return. In 2002 and 2003, there were 16 rounds of dialogue between the Americans and the Iranians in Geneva in order to manage matters relating to Iraq after the collapse of the Saddam regime. And this was called off by the Americans because the American diplomats were terrified that their political establishment would get to know about it. At that time, the Bush regime was very robustly influenced by the neocons. Even after that, you have the nuclear agreement. Did the Iranians withdraw from the agreement or was it the Americans? And then the Americans imposed upon Iran some of the most severe sanctions that can be imposed on another country for no fault of the Iranians themselves. This Iran has been subjected to extraordinary privation, extraordinary violence, extraordinary name calling. It is not a normal country because of this. And yet it has survived. It still wants to engage with the Americans. I would say to you that they would be happy with a deal with the Americans. They've had 5 rounds of dialogue, and then they were going to have the 6th round when the Israelis attacked.
Talmiz Ahmed, for giving us that comprehensive view, a kind of a big picture view of Iran and why we should not underestimate Iran. I appreciate you joining us. We made this effort to bring you 2 sides of the story. If you see Western narratives, it's completely one-sided. Our attempt is to get all sides to the story. We had the Israeli foreign minister yesterday. Today we had leading voices on Iran. I appreciate Talmiz Ahmed joining me. Just to remind you, at 10 p.m., another top guest joining me, Ashley Tellis, will tell me exactly what Donald Trump is up to. He's the other key figure in this Israel-Iran conflict. That's coming up. But first, of course, let's turn to my other big story. It's been 8 days since the Air India Flight 171 crash that claimed more than 275 lives in Ahmedabad. Since then, there have been many questions and countless theories being floated. But the answer to all of them could lie in the aircraft's black box, which was recovered earlier this week. But if the past is anything to go by, we've often seen that these reports do not make the light of day. What could happen in this instance? Could the black box be the answer to all that is expected in finding out just what happened to AI 171? Joining me at this moment is another special guest. Guy Grayton is Associate Professor Aviation and the Environment at the Cranfield University. He's an aeronautical engineer. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Grattan. You've looked at various investigations in the past. Do you believe that the black box will offer all the clues, given that both the flight data recorder and the black box are there, that will ensure that we will know what happened to AI 171?
I think it's very likely, yes. The two recorders, the flight data recorder or FDR, should tell us what happened to the aeroplane, and equally critically, the cockpit voice recorder or CVR should tell us what the crew thought was happening to the aeroplane and any actions that they took. So whilst, of course, the analysis of all of the wreckage is equally important, I think that these two boxes will provide the most critical clues in understanding what occurred in this awful tragedy at Ahmedabad.
Of course, there is the belief is that the black box itself may need to go to the West, to America, for further decoding. Do you believe that it's only in America that we will know what happens to a black box? Is this not something that, in your view, every country has enough of expertise and research to decode the black box?
Not every country, certainly, but Britain, France, and America certainly all have that capability. And India has been creating that capability itself with Hindustan Aeronautics at Lucknow. So I believe that part of the debate that's going on right now is whether the Indian facility is yet mature enough to be able to do this work, or whether it needs to come to one of the Western facilities. And clearly, if it comes over here, then the Indian authorities will need to maintain absolute security over it, because it's so critical and important to India to get this right. So I find that unsurprising that there has been a bit of a delay, however frustrating that is for everybody in learning what these devices have got to tell us.
What apart from the black box holds the key? You mentioned the frustration with the delay, but it's not just the black box, is it? What else could hold the key to what happened to flight AI 171?
Well, the wreckage itself. So the Indian AAIB will have been relocating all of the parts of the aircraft to a secure facility. They will be inspecting everything, understanding the damage, and in particular, they're going to be looking for anything that shows signs of damage that may have occurred before the crash. And if they find anything that shows signs of pre-crash damage, then that is also going to be very important evidence as to the nature of the accident.
One final question, Mr. Grattan. What role do Boeing and GE Aerospace play in an investigation like this? Much at stake for Boeing in particular. How do you, as investigators, manage potential conflicts of interest given the enormous commercial stakes involved?
So this investigation is being led quite rightly by the Indian AAIB. However, Boeing obviously understand the 707 better than anybody in the world. General Electric understand the engines in that aircraft better than anybody in the world. So having them there advising the AAIB is massively enhancing to their ability to do a competent investigation.
However, but would they accept the investigation findings given their own conflict of interest involved?
Well, the way the AAIB report is likely to be issued in due course is it will conclude what is believed to have happened, but then it will go on and it will provide recommendations. And those recommendations are intended to prevent any future similar accidents. So one hopes that GE and Boeing, and for the matter, the rest of the world's airlines operating the 787, will read very carefully and accept those recommendations. But until that has happened, we can't actually know what their actions will be.
I'm going to leave it there, Guy Grattan, for explaining to our viewers what lies ahead for the investigators, the challenges and the role of the black box and the flight data recorder. Thanks very much for joining me here on the News Today. Okay, let's turn from there to our ground report tonight. Monsoons, floods, wreaking havoc in several parts of the country. Here's a look at what's been happening. Incessant rainfall over the past 48 hours has brought Jharkhand to its knees. Continuous rain has triggered a sudden rise in water levels of most rivers in the state. In Khunti, several people left stranding on the river, thankfully rescued in an operation coordinated by local authorities and NDRF. Jharkhand, Jamshedpur, the most affected. The entire city flooded due to heavy rain. City's Ashiana Woodland Society, located on National Highway 33, completely submerged. The Tata Ranchi Highway has been shut. In neighboring Bengal, a flood-like situation now being seen in Arambagh and Khanakul areas of the Hooghly district. Water overflowing from the Dwarkeshwar River, entering residential areas and flooding several homes. The Shilavati River in Bengal's Bankura district is also overflowing. The overflowing river has submerged multiple bridges, cut off communication on the Bankura-Jhagram State Highway. Sudden and heavy rainfall flooding the pilgrimage route and leaving thousands of devotees trapped en route to the revered Purnagiri shrine in Uttarakhand's Champawat. However, the stranded devotees safely evacuated by the SDRF in a dramatic rescue operation. Heavy rainfall causing significant damage to road infrastructure in part of Mumbai. Large potholes now being seen in Wadala's JJ Bridge. Visuals on your screen show a deteriorated road surface, posing as always a serious risk to commuters and vehicles. Heavy rains continuing to lash several districts of Himachal Pradesh. Vehicular movement on the Dharamshala Hoshiarpur National Highway came to a halt after a landslide. The Kangra bus stand also flooded due to the incessant rain. Okay, let's turn to tonight's fact check. The claim is Iranian women are now defying the regime amidst the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict. The fact is the videos that you're often seeing on this predate the ongoing Iran-Israel conflict. They are not recent. So if you catch such videos about women now defying the Iranian regime, please think of them as old videos. No new such videos have emerged while the conflict is on. Okay, let's turn from there to our good news today story. In a world often driven by greed, one moment of kindness has captured the hearts of millions. A 93-year-old man, that's right, 93-year-old man from Maharashtra's Sambhajinagar, who begged on the streets to save for a Mangal Sutra for his wife, found an unexpected gesture of compassion. Here's the story from Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar.
On a pilgrimage to Pandharpur, 93-year-old Nivruti Shinde and his wife Shantabai made a quiet stop at a jewelry store in Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, carrying dreams, love and a bag full of coins. Nivruti had saved 1,120 rupees, every rupee collected by begging outside temples and at traffic signals over a month, just to buy his wife a gold-plated Mangal Sutra.
15 पण ते आपल्या खायला तुझं तेव्हा खायला नव्हतं द्यायची म्हणजे आपली इच्छा होती हा घर सोडून आम्ही वाना करायलो भिकार मागतो आम्ही.
The shopkeeper Nilesh Kivansara of Gopika Jewelers was moved. Instead of charging the full amount, he took only 20 rupees, 10 rupees from each and gave them the ornament worth nearly rupees 3,000.
एक मंगलसूत्र की महाराष्ट्र में वाटी पहनते वो वाटी अच्छी लगी. उनके आशीर्वाद रूप मैंने आजी से 10 और वो बुजुर्ग अंकल से 10 ऐसे 20 रुपए लिए. वो 1 ग्राम गोल्ड ज्वेलरी में की थी गोल्ड प्लेटिंग करी हुई, तो वो करीब दोनों मिला के 3-1 हज़ार रुपये के आजू बाजू के होंगे.
Locals say Nivruti begs in the harsh weather, sleeping outside temples, just to give his wife some dignity.
मंदिर के बाहर निकले गए, रात में वो मंदिर के बाहर सोते। इतनी उम्र में अपनी बीवी के लिए एक रुपया मांग के उन्होंने जमा किया है। उनके जो छुट्टे पैसे होते, एक, दो, 5, वो मेरे पास रखते हैं। उसके नोट बना के मैं उनको देता हूँ।
In their weathered hands, a symbol of devotion and fidelity. In a jeweler's heart, an act of grace. Together, it is the kind of humanity that shines brighter than gold. Bureau Report, India Today.
Good to see. Jai Maharashtra, Jai Bharat. At 10 p.m. tonight, I'll be joined by another leading voice who understands Donald Trump better than most. That's at 10 p.m. with Ashley Tellis. But my image tonight, President Draupadi Murmu getting emotional as the students of the National Institute for the Empowerment of Persons with Visual Disabilities extended birthday wishes to her with a song. That's the President getting tearful. It's our image of the day. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind, Namaskar.